Welcome, everyone. Good morning. I am Teresa Lazzaro from Research Institute of Organic Agriculture, FiBL, and I speak to you from our office in Brussels, and I will be moderating the morning part of our event today on organic breeding. I show here the agenda for the morning. Our first speaker is Monika Messmer. Monika is a team leader of the plant breeding team at FiBL, and she's also president of the European Consortium for Organic Plant Breeding, EcoPB. Monika manages the scientific coordination of the Life Seed project, and she's also highly involved in Engagement Biobreeding project. Today, Monika will provide us an overview on the importance of organic breeding in the context of organic agriculture.
Thank you, Teresa, for the introduction, and I'm quite glad to want to start with the first presentation of our event today to show you the need on organic plant breeding. And there's actually, I wanted to start with the great challenges that we have with in general with organic food production, and you might all have heard about the European farm to fork strategy that is also emphasizing this, and the key pillars that is for the future food strategy and the food systems is that we really need to reduce the environmental effect and also the climatic footprints. We need to strengthen the food system and make sure that we can keep food security even in the face of climate change and the face of biodiversity losses. And in addition, we have to make sure that we have access to sufficient, nutritious, sustainable, but also affordable food. It's also needed that we have a global transition of the food systems, not only in Europe, but worldwide. And it's also stated in the farm to fork strategy that nutrient losses should be reduced by 50%, as well as pesticide and antibiotics. And it's also foreseen that organic farmland should increase to 25%, as this is a very sustainable way of food production. Okay, the other challenges that we have is that we have a very strong market concentration with global players in the seed as well as in the livestock breeding. We have shrinking agricultural land and also declining soil fertility. We also have a very great challenge that we need to have a transition in our diets towards more plant-based proteins instead of meat. And we also have increasing quality requirements for the organic food processing. And of course, also the consumers has very high demands on healthy and tasty food from local production, but also he has demands of food that is free of genetic engineering. I just want to illustrate here and with these two figures that presently on global scale, 40% of the human calories are based on only 3 crops, which is maize, rice, and wheat. And also for the animals, it's in general on 5 crops and 5 livestock. And of course, they all feed on plants in addition. On the next slide, I want to show the just the decline that we also have not on also on agrobiodiversity, but also genetic diversity within species. Here you see a comparison how the number of cultivars diminished. So if we had, for example, 400 tomato cultivars in 2019, and if you look today, it was only 79 cultivars. The demand that we have when it comes to of the organic sector for crop cultivars is that we really need to have a very large number of crops, and that crops need to have high quality and also high yield, and they also have to perform under low input or less fertile conditions. There are several specific requirements like good nutrient use efficiency, weed suppression, but also pest and disease resistance are quite important, as well as digestibility when it comes to feed. But also we have quite some emphasis to put on good processing, nutritional quality, as well as taste. And also shelf life becomes more and more important. For the farmer, it's also important that he has the option to use farm-safe seed. And also it's important to have genetic diversity. That means that we also want to have genetic diversity within cultivars in one field, for example, by open pollinated populations or mixed cropping or cultivar mixtures. It is in general that genetic modified organisms are forbidden. That also includes gene editing, and also in several label organizations, cytoplast fusion is forbidden. And it's very important that we have can keep the genetic resources free of genetic modification contamination. When we look at the situation that we have in plant breeding, we see that there's a large concentration of conventional plant breeders that focus on a few crops that have a big return of investment. And we also know that around 90% of all the cultivars grown in organic farming comes from conventional breeding. And that resulted also this in a neglect of niche crops for organic farming, like breeding for breeding for legumes or catch crops or special crops. And it's also these cultivars developed in conventional breeding have a limited suitability for organic farming. More and more, we also see that the methods used in conventional breeding no longer comply with the guidelines of the organic sector. And we already have experienced in the last year that there are a lot of big overdominance of cell fusion derived CMS hybrids in the brassica vegetables and chicory, which are no longer permitted in most organic labels in Germany, for example. And this has led to a massive bottlenecks for cauliflower and broccoli. And this sometimes also lead to the consequences that farmer had stopped to cultivate these crops. So for these topics, organic breeding can present an alternative to have adapted crops. When I come now to animal breeding, as we're talking about today about organic breeding that includes both plant and animal breeding, it's the same that we also need breeds that are adapted to organic farms with a high lifetime span, high fertility and good health. And we also need to take into account the animal welfare aspects, as well as maintaining the genetic diversity. There are also specific requirements that we want to have animals that are very robust with a long life. We need also local breeds that adapted to the location, that can, for example, cope with the feed that can be produced on the farm. We need healthy offsprings and also good nutritional quality of the animal products. And again, we also need conservation of genetic diversity. There is also a ban of genetic modified organisms, including new breeding techniques. And here also the conservation is quite important for the future. Also, the situation here looks very similar. We have a very high concentration of a few animal breeds, as I showed before, that the 5 breeds. That leads to a loss of animals that are adapted to organic farming. We have many cows already under organic farming that are derived from artificial insemination of bulls that were originally developed by embryo transfer, which itself is not allowed in organic farming. And there's also a drastic narrowing of the genetic material, not only in the livestock maintenance, but also for breeding of livestock. And also here there's a high dependence on conventional breeding, and these are in many cases are really not adapted to the organic farming situation. So why do we need organic plant breeding, or why we focus our webinar also on this, is that we really have a strong restriction of genetic diversity, also due to limited number of cultivars, species and animal breeds, but we also have limitation via patenting of living organisms and the dependency of few multinational breeding companies. The conventional breeding is really focusing on industrialized agriculture, and this is diverging more and more from the demands of the organic producers. And we also see that the use of new breeding techniques is increasing and will be, I think, will pose a big threat to the organic sector in the near future, as these techniques are not compliant with the organic principles. We also need continuous adaptation of cultivars to the changing conditions of climate change, and but also consumer requirements and legal framework. And also we see that the organic market is growing very strongly, and there is also the quality demand is increasing, and we also have seen that with the farm to fork strategy, there will be a further push for organic, and we need to be prepared to really provide good seed to cover the demand of the organic sector. So why should organic breeding be financially promoted? I think there's this high dependency on the cultivars that are on high input conditions. There are only a few breeding initiatives, organic breeding initiatives, that cover at the moment just a small number of crops, which has been driven by pioneers that have been investing a lot of own resources and have been supported by private foundations. We also know that breeding is a long-term approach that needs 10 to 20 years. So we need to think now what kind of food we want to have and what kind of food supply we need in 20 years to make the right decisions today. And we also see that we need much more breeding initiatives and different breeding approaches to cover all the different aspects. And we also need to invest in capacity building so that we can also have career development of young breeders. And as I said before, there's a divergence in breeding goals and techniques. So we have to make sure that this will not cause a severe shortage of cultivars and contamination problems in the near future, which could result in big consumer in loss in consumer trust. So how does organic breeding benefit the sector? I think organic breeding respects the values and principles of the organic sector, and it does not use critical breeding techniques. This way, it really ensures the integrity of the organic producers and strengthens the consumer confidence. Organic breeding takes also into account the need of organic farmers, processors, traders, and consumers, and this is the foundation for high quality of organic food. The organic breeding produces animals that are taking into account welfare, but also sustainable feeding and husbandry, and it creates a large range of different plant species and cultivars. And this is very important for innovative, sustainable, and climate-friendly food systems that also promoting circular economy. Organic plant breeding, moreover, is the basis for self-determined, independent future development of the organic sector. Therefore, we see that organic breeding is a very important research and development activity to secure the supply for sustainable organic food for the future. And with this, I would like to thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Monika. Our next speaker is Herbert Völkle. Herbert is Managing Director of gzpk, a biodynamic arable crop breeder organization from Switzerland. gzpk is an example of organic plant breeding organization that focuses on value chain collaborations to implement breeding programs to answer specific challenges of the organic sector. We will hear from Herbert about their work at gzpk and about a specific project that they already have in place related to a breeding program on organic sunflower.
Thanks, Teresa, for the invitation and for the introduction. I will start with our slogan, Sowing the Future. On the challenges of organic agriculture, referring to varieties, are already presented by Monika. I focus on these 4 points. We have this climate change, we have the decline in agrobiodiversity, and for certain countries also the withdrawal of the state's interests from research and breeding, conventional breeding, as we do, classical breeding, and this concentration in the seed market. This would mean it's more important than ever before to have an independent ecological crop breeding. Organic breeding has 2 directions. The one part is looking back to the traditional varieties, to do research on the biodiversity. But often we have problems with these old varieties that they are not fitting the modern, even organic agricultural system. So we need to look back and to find some varieties, some old varieties, and to work with them. Looking to the future means to find high quality crops which are fitting to the agriculture of today. In this looking back, this means for us to maintain the high agrobiodiversity in our pre-breeding pools. So we are looking for crossing partners to create biodiversity in our pools, and then we have to maintain them for years and years. And maintaining does not mean in a box, but in situ, as you see here. We need this broad basis for the breeding. Looking forward means to find these varieties which are find the requirements of today's cultivation and processing. We try also to breed for modern and very complex cultivation systems. The most simple example is mixed crops, but we have also this direction in agriculture for Germany. It's called green bridge, where you sow one crop into the other crop, and so on. So we, since we are working for varieties which are used in 20 years, we have also the task to look what kind of agriculture is the agriculture of the future. The breeding process of our crops needs at least 10, mostly 15 years. The first step is looking for crossing partners, cross them in the second year, because the first year we need to observe the crossing partners. The next step is building up this diverse populations. Then in year 6 or 7, we start with the human selection. Between we have the natural selection only, and then when we are sure to have the right line, we have to give this line to the official testing, and then in arable crops we have this long way from 10 kilos, 20 kilos of the breeder to the 5 or 10 tons we need to make the first to sell the first seeds. Mm-hmm. So what needs are typical for an organic variety? We need better plasticity, this we do through breeding in different environmental conditions. And we also find that varieties, good organic varieties, are able to enter into a dialogue with the environment, so that we have better resilience and plasticity. We need health plants, but not with a single resistance, but with more tolerance and the ability to cope with plant diseases. And as we saw the last years, we need also plants who have the capacity to buffer the weather conditions. Because in organic agriculture we don't have the possibility to give them the nutritions. And all this together leads to the stability of a crop in terms of yield and quality. Not always both, but especially in baking wheat, we need this stability and quality, so that the harvest is always usable for bakers. gzpk stands for Working on Commons, and as a non-profit initiative. Since 33 years, we are working on organic crops, and we are working very strong in the regions where we have our breeding plants. We are based in both in Switzerland and in Germany, and we are working on wheat spelt, triticale, emmer, peas, lupins, sunflower, and maize for silage. In the varieties with the red point, we are the only one who are working or selling seeds. This was this example for the collaboration in the value chain. 2013-14, we started to collaborate with these companies because the first step was that Veleda saw the importance of an organic sunflower breeding. So the goals are ensuring the access to GMO-free seeds because sunflower breeding is owned by only 4 or 5 companies worldwide. They are working with hybrids where we have no possibility to use the parent lines. So we had to build up a completely new population, and these companies want to have more independence from the large companies. We need to have a reproducible variety, and in the specification of the sunflower seed is we need early lines for the north, not the north, but north of the Alps, and these companies need sunflower oil with high oleic acid contents. The questions in this cooperation with the companies are, besides the selection questions, how can we registrate such a variety, because it's in the European legal framework. Until now, it was not possible to register a sunflower variety as a population because it's not homogeneous enough, or the variability is too high. And the next question is, how is the owner of such a variety? Because the companies paid for the breeding, and but we are a non-profit organization. And then for the sunflower seeds, it's a very important point to have a very good multiplication for the seed, because it's not as easy as with wheat and spelt to produce seed in a high quality. And this is also a task of this cooperation. I end with this picture of the tunnel of sunflower breeding. Thank you.
Thank you, Herbert. Our next speaker is Wytze Nauta. Wytze represents the Dutch Organization for Organic Livestock Breeding that aims to increase the availability of organic breeding stock. Wytze will bring to our seminar the perspective of the livestock sector in relation to organic breeding. We will hear from him about the approach that they use in his organization, the main challenges in breeding for the livestock sector.
I am Wytze Nauta from the Netherlands, and I am working about 20 years now on the development of organic breeding. In 2009, I did my PhD. I worked for the Louis Bolk Institute and also for Wageningen University, and I did my PhD on animal breeding. And after that, I wrote it down in my little book, but nobody would start with it unless I did it myself. And so I started with dairy farmers and also with some chicken farmers to breed cows organically and to breed chickens organically. And my motto is also learning by doing, because you can always have questions and think about how to do it. But if you don't start, and if you start, you have new questions. So that's why I started, and of course during all these years, I have new questions to answer. So why organic breeding? I can also maybe copy from Monika Messmer the presentation. Why organic breeding, and also the former speaker Sigmund said that everything had to be a whole organic, so 100% organic. That's also what you read in the intentions of organic farming, that we have to go to 100% organic chain. We need robust animals for that. You cannot use racing cars in the field. So we need animals that can handle the more also robust organic system. But for me, it's also very important. We need an animal-friendly breeding system. And I have been working for also in my former life, I always say, before organic, in the reproduction business of cattle, and I have seen what is happening in the animal breeding with cattle, dairy cattle, and we really should not use this. I could show you some more later on that. And consumers do expect it. When I talk to consumers, 100%, if I tell them what is happening in conventional breeding, they say that they don't expect it. They expect that organic should use more animal-friendly organic breeding. And of course, we have to stay free of GMO. And gene editing, CRISPR-Cas is standing at the door, also in dairy cattle breeding and chicken and pig breeding. So if we want to stay free of that, we have to set up our own breeding systems. The breeding goal, if you talk about chickens or cows or pigs or goats, whatever, we need animals that can get old, have a high lifetime production. If you select those animals and breed with them, the next generation, you have all the traits they need for that in the animal. That's the red line in the breeding goal. Then the farmers, they need milk with high fat and especially protein, what they want. I always think these traits are also from the conventional breeding. Of course, a cow produces protein, but yeah, if it's a very high protein, then this will cost a lot of energy, and of course also protein, what they put in it, and we should think about such things. But yeah, good milk, and good eggs, of course, quality eggs, good quality meat. But we need also robust, resilient animals. That is coming back. We need animals that, if they get old, they are resilient, and they have a good fertility, and they don't need to. We don't want animals that need that get sick and need antibiotics. So I also wrote in my PhD, in my thesis, if we want to do it organically, we cannot have this expensive testing system, what we have in dairy cattle breeding for dairy. So the red line again is here. You use young animals to use them as soon as possible. The best offspring, the best bulls, the best chickens, the best pigs from organic farms, and select them and use them for the next generation. You do that every year again with not only a few bulls or chickens, but you need more young animals every year. And you have to spread these genetics evenly over the population. So this way you get the short generation interval and a fast genetic gain. So actually what you do is, you look for the average best animals from the population and use them as soon as possible. And don't keep them for a long time. This will only give high costs. So we call it the cold system. With bulls, we select the bull, we collect as soon as possible semen from the bull, we use it, and then the bull goes to a farm as a breeding bull, or it will get slaughtered. And also for the chickens, I every year I breed a new generation of chickens, and then the old chickens go. At the moment we have the cooperative for bio AI, organic AI. We now have about 100 members. And what we actually do, all the things are there. There are farmers with good cows, and from the cows we get good bulls. We have to raise these bulls, and then we have to collect semen. Until now we have to collect the semen at a conventional breeding station, but we want to set up this year, probably next year, an organic breeding station for bulls in the Netherlands. And then we select the best bulls, and we put the semen on the market, and farmers can buy the semen. And then for the chickens, first I wanted to also breed, because the cattle I breed and the bulls I breed together with dairy farmers. The bulls are raised at the dairy farm, and so I don't need space for that. And I also wanted to breed the chickens with more farmers, but that's not possible. So I set up this kinship breeding with chickens at my own little farm. So I breed every year a new generation, and then I sell young chicks to other farmers with it's a small scale with 50 to 250 hens for production. So and we select the chickens on egg quality and percentage of egg production. And next to that, it's a dual purpose chicken. So we have the roosters, we raise the roosters and we slaughter them as soon as the chickens start laying eggs. So about 18 weeks, then we slaughter the roosters. So in this picture, you see a number of bulls we have for AI at the moment. And it's not that many yet, 22 bulls. But in the Netherlands, we are the first ones with organic bulls. So it's worldwide unique, and I hope that this will grow all over the world. We don't want to do the breeding for all the world, of course. I hope we get also organic breeding companies in other countries. But we show here that it is possible just to select the best bulls from the best cows from organic farms and collect semen and sell it to the dairy farmers. This is a nice picture of the Vredelingers, the chickens. I started this breed actually with crossing hybrids and some breeds, also a Sussex, a purebred Sussex, and you can still see that. So it's a mixture of some hybrids and a Sussex rooster, and that was 10 years ago. I mixed it all the time, every year again. And so I get more and more a purebred Vredelinger. About 6 years ago, we started to call it the Vredelinger. And as soon as we gave it a name, it is becoming more and more a breed in people's mind. So what is a breed? You can ask, but this is what we call a breed. And they produce about 250 eggs per hen per year. And the roosters are about, in 18 weeks, about 2 kilos. Live weight. This is a picture of sales of the semen of the bulls. You can see it's going up and down in the first couple of years. It's not in the regulation, so it depended a lot on my energy I put in it all those years to sell the semen. But from 2018 on, we set up this cooperative for BOKI, and so we have the members, and the members have to buy semen, and now we get a more better relationship with the customers, with the dairy farmers, and you see that the sales are growing, and this year we will go over the 3,000 straws we will sell. And one thing I can tell here also is that the dairy farmers, especially in the Netherlands, I don't know how it's in other countries, but a lot of farmers put semen of meat bulls into 50% of the dairy cows they don't use for breeding. So and now we are putting a little bit pressure also on the market, on the farmers, that at least you could get this semen from organic bulls. And then we have in the Netherlands 400 farms which should use at least 100 straws per year. So you can imagine that this will really boost the sales, and also the money we collect with that. And with this money we can put more breeding bulls for dairy on the market. So this is the sales from the Vredelingers. About 5,000 chickens I sell per year, young chickens. Sometimes I raise them up to 5 weeks or 18 weeks, but mostly I sell young chickens, 1 day old. You see my brooding machine and some chickens which are just hatched. But this is what is happening, and they are mostly sold in the Netherlands, but also more and more I get customers in Belgium, and also some in Germany. So that is what's happening with these little dual-purpose chicks. So results and conclusions. Organic AI, we have as a result now 103 members, and we in potential there are about 400 farmers in the Netherlands that use AI for the cows. So we can have 300 more. And the sales will go up the coming years, I'm sure. And also for the Vredelingers, 5,000 chicks per year. But I don't know if the Vredelinger will, to the real big farms with thousands of animals. I always ask myself, is this organic? But and more people do that. But I will, with the Vredelingers, focus on the market with the small scale, with hens in mobile homes, with dairy farms in the field. So that is what I really like to see, and I breed Vredelingers for this sector. And then I have written here, the sector still keeps quiet, national and internationals. We have this organic breeding, but I always ask myself, why is there nobody else in the world starting up organic breeding? And then I really mean organic breeding and not breeding for organic, because this is always happening. A lot of breeding companies, of course, in the world, they want to breed animals for organic farming. But they are still making these animals out of their own system, the conventional system, with all the techniques they use, like embryo transfer, ovum pickup, hormones, stimulation, etc., etc. So, I think the consumer now is we have to ask the consumer what they think about it, and I think there has to be some pressure from the consumers to get more organic breeding. This is what I want to show you. You know, we ask the consumers if they go to the store to think behind the product. You know, is it organic? Is it animal friendly? They don't see it actually, but they trust it, and they think that the animals have a good life and they get healthy food, and therefore they pay more. But why do farmers not think behind the product? You know, if they buy the straws, if they buy the semen from the bulls, if they buy the chickens, which have been little chicks from the conventional breeding system, why do farmers not think behind this product? You know, also farmers should think behind the product and say, hey, this should also be organic and from an animal-friendly and organic breeding system. So we ask the consumers to do this, and I think as farmers, we should also think behind the products. 10 minutes is too short, and I don't know. I already used more minutes, I think. But you can always contact me, and we need more discussion about this. And this day is a very good day for that. But later on, we have to discuss this, and especially with the consumers, I think. So this is my message to you. And thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Wytze, for bringing the perspective of the livestock sector in our conversation. Sigmund Walbaum represents NATURATA International. The members of NATURATA International are suppliers of foods from organic production. And in Sigmund's presentation, we will hear about the perspective of a group of retailers on the topic of organic breeding. Sigmund will present also the Fair Breeding Project, in which the members of NATURATA International are involved now for more than 14 years.
So hello, everybody. Greetings from Luxembourg. I would like to give you a little glance of the Fair Breeding Project that we run for about 15 years now as NATURATA International. It's a cooperation project between NATURATA International and Cultivars. It's an association for breeding and research of and crop maintenance in Germany. NATURATA International, to give you a little information about that, is a cooperation, a non-profit cooperation of 15 partners, which all have the name NATURATA on their brand, as retailers, as manufacturers, or as a logistic company. And this nonprofit organization is about 30 years old, almost, and it was founded in order to be partner in the organic market structures, because NATURATA, the charter of NATURATA actually says that there has to be the organic market is supposed to be an organism, comparing to the biodynamic system, that the supply chain members work together as an organism. And we try to do this every day. And in 2006, this group of partners decided to integrate seeds into the supply chain as a full member, actually, you can say. And the principles of NATURATA International is to act collectively. We are based on biodynamic ideas. We try to maintain sustainable and cooperative supply chains, not from farm to fork, but from seeds to plates, including the breeders. And we try to do this by establishing and organizing roundtables where every member of the supply chain joins, and we discuss the problems, the opportunities, the challenges in the supply chain of the organic market. And we try to focus every year on one special theme, like juice or bread or eggs or potatoes, and to be conscious of what's happening on every step, on every partner on the supply chain. So fair breeding was one of those projects, started in 2006. And it was, the goal was to integrate the financing of cultivation and breeding, not to buy seeds, but to put the breeders and cultivators into the opportunity to just breed. Organic vegetables are not just one issue of the organic market, but it's the, or organic breeding in common is not one issue of the organic market, but we are dependent on that in this market. And if we don't, if we are not able to include this ring of chain of the supply chain into the financial system of the organic market, it will always be, yeah, it's not able to, get enough strength to develop and to cultivate the seeds and animals we need. So that was the goal. And the system, the financing system of this project is that the NATURATA retailers spend an amount of money depending on their turnover once a year to Kultursaat e.V. And the members of Kultursaat e.V. Decide about the budget and what they use it for. So it's about 25,000 euros a year that we're collecting, and we give it to Kultursaat, and they decide which varieties of vegetables are cultivated. NATURATA International doesn't have any requirements of ownership. We don't own those seeds. We don't even know if there will be seeds after the cultivation or the breeding, but that's not our goal. The goal is to put those seeders, those breeders free in their work. So it's very important that NATURATA International commits itself for at least 10 years to breed a variety, because it needs at least 10 to 12 years to breed a variety successfully. So during this time, this cooperation period, the members of Kultursat e.V. developed 3 varieties of cauliflowers, not only with our money, but with our money. And they brought it to the authorization by the Federal Office for Plants and Varieties in Germany. So these cauliflowers varieties are available for the farmers or the gardeners. And this project ended at 2018. And we are now looking forward to find new varieties and to commit ourselves with Kultursat e.V. for the next at least 10 years. And so this project brought about, we committed, or we spent 120,000 euros around for this breeding of cauliflowers varieties. So for the future, the challenges for the future from our point of view as a retailer in the organic market is to start processing, start the production of process for these varieties, including financial support if needed, because we see that it's very difficult for the gardeners to cultivate those varieties for the market. So we have to put another project beside the cultivation project in order to get those varieties into the market and to cultivate them in situ for the market. And so we are working on a project to find gardeners who cultivate those varieties, that we can make experiences, how it works, where the problems are. And we try to find a new way of financing these this project. And so we can make the next step that the whole supply chain, how do you say, takes responsibility not just for the seed, for the breeding, but for the cultivating and the to get it into the market, to help each other to get those varieties into the market. Yeah, that's what I said. We approved a new project, maybe like such as red cabbage or others. But we don't decide as NATURATA International which varieties are breeded. That's in the responsibility of NATURATA, Kultursat e.V. We're trying to build an advertisement, a marketing project for those varieties or those projects, like those plates we put in the vegetable and fruit departments of our stores, so the customer gets in touch with that problem. We are looking for others to join this project. It's not a NATURATA International closed shop project, but it's open for everybody. We do work together with others, with other nonprofit organizations and other traders, market partners. But we would like to enlarge in this project. So if you are interested, get in touch. Fair breeding is not a crop specialized project or a gardener's project. It can be widened to animal breeding. So if there are partners and projects, we are interested getting it into communication, and we will try to help to guarantee the availability of those varieties. And as Herbert said, we don't own these varieties. These varieties are free for everybody. Kultursat e.V. owns them, and everybody is able to avail to buy those varieties. This last picture is supposed to show you a little bit more precise what we are doing, and this is an example from NATURATA Luxembourg, where I work, and you see it's not a supply chain, but it's the way we look at the whole organic market. And fair breeding stands at the beginning of every cultivation, or organic seeds actually stay there, and then it goes all around through the biodynamic or organic farming circle and comes into the market. And you see here, for example, BIOC is a farmers corporation in Luxembourg. BioGro is a wholesaler, and NATURATA is the retailer. And the benefit of it goes back into the farm circle, and there is supposed to be enough money for seeds included. So thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Sigmund. Our next speaker is Freya Schäfer from FiBL. Freya is research coordinator of FiBL Germany, and she's involved both in live seed and engagement bio-breeding project. Freya is expert on the regulation and policy framework regarding organic seed sector, and she's responsible for the development of a European-wide rooted database for organic seed. Today, Freya will present us the current situation related to the financing strategies of organic breeding.
I have the pleasure to present you the current situation of breeding financing schemes, and actually this is based on a past project which was led by me and Monika, and the project was located in Switzerland and Germany, and it was called Supporting Organic Plant Breeding in Switzerland and Germany, and it was, as I mentioned, coordinated by Monika, FiBL Switzerland, and me. And it lasts for 5 years, and the aim was initially to support organic breeders to get more public funding, to lobby to generate more public funds in future, also at national and European level, and facilitate networking between the actors, and also to support young breeders. The financing schemes I'm presenting to you are based on the results and our experiences from the project. So they are more or less focusing on Germany and Switzerland. Of course, there are more options in the different regions in Europe, but it's focusing on these regions. In general, there are different kinds of financing schemes. The most important are donations. The donations are collected and coordinated, for instance, by the seed fund, the GLS Saatgutfonds, where different donators, for instance, private persons, foundations, processors, and retailers pay to this fund. There are also some foundations like the Software AG Foundation, the Mercator Foundation, Salvia Foundation, and some other foundations. They give money to organic breeders. The most important fund is the GLS Saatgut Fund. In 2020, this year, they had 1.6 million euros, and the distribution was about 45% to the cereals and 45% to the vegetable breeding sector and 10% for the fruits. But the limitations are that how to say, it stays at a charity level. So there's no direct commitment from the value chain actor or from the donator to the breeder. Of course, it's an advantage because it is very smoothly coordinated. But at the same time, if you ask to donate more, then they say, no, why should I do more? I already donate some money to the GLS fund. So it's a charity level. And there's no direct partnership connection between the breeder and the donator. Then, of course, there are the licensees and the seed production fees, the variety development contributions or sale of seeds or vegetative planting material. So they are different from the production of the seed, or the seed generates some backflow, return on investment. So the donators are the farmers and the gardeners, but the return on investment is often quite low. So the contribution compared to the costs of the breeding are comparable low, and they do not cover the main costs of breeding. And the main problem is that it's also seen in the conventional part where they have these licenses that it is often focused on the large crops, because there you have a lot of return on investment, and therefore it's not supporting the whole diversity of breeds and crops we need in an organic farming, and therefore it's like a very focused aim. But of course, it's important to have these licenses at some level, and also the sale of seeds, but it does not cover all costs of breeding, and it leads to a allocation to the main crops. Then we have the public funding. The public funding is, it's a very important issue, but at the same time, it is it costs, or it gives many limitations, because in Germany we have this BLE, BMBF, European Innovation Partnerships, and in Switzerland BÖLW and some other public funds. So there are quite some funds in Germany and Switzerland, but at the same time they are just available for the breeding research, so not for the practical breeding work. And breeding takes a long, 10 to 12 years, and therefore often the projects are funded for 2, 3, 4 years, and then they stop, and then you have to change the crop, but because it's often difficult to apply for the same crop twice for a public fund. So it's somehow a starting point. You can develop some methods for breeding, but the actual breeding work and the development of varieties or cultivars are not covered by public funds. And then additionally, you have a lot of high administrative efforts, and the application and the reporting phases are very exhausting. And then often they are tied to a high proportion of own funds. So you have an own part of money you have to bring into this public fund. Then we have also the public funds at European level, like the Horizon 2020, European Innovation Projects or Partnerships, the LEADER projects, Horizon Europe coming up now. There we have also the same limitation as mentioned above, but also that you often need to have very large consortia. And for the actual breeding work, there's very little money available in such large consortia, because there you have, like, you need a communication strategy, a website, and all this things around, and high administrative level you have to fulfill. And therefore the breeding, the actual breeding, is also quite little in the large projects. And the proposal time, or to apply for such a proposal, is very long and difficult, and often not manageable for small breeding initiatives. And it is also, they often don't have the capacity and the experience to apply for such a large project. Then in Switzerland, there is another project. It's called, or it's a description. They charge for conventional seed the price difference you would normally pay for organic seed. So, for instance, if a farmer uses conventional seed, they have to pay the price difference to the organic seed, or it is calculated lump sum, like 25% extra they have to pay to the BioSwiss fund. And this BioSwiss fund is dedicated to support organic breeding. But the limitation is, of course, on one hand, the concept is quite interesting, but on the other hand, it's a agreement of a private label association. So it is not a legal implementation from the ministry. So only the private label organization is coordinating, and as in Switzerland, more than 95% of organic farmers are member of BioSwiss. More or less everyone is following this this agreement. But at the same time, if you want to implement it in a different country, for instance, in a country where you have more than one label organization, it's quite difficult to convince the actors, because they of course fear that they would lose some customers if only one label organization would implement this concept. But at the same time, if all implement it, could also be possible, but then they could also lose customers, because farmers could change to the normal like the European Union certification, but not a private certification. And therefore it's a little bit difficult to be implemented. And then at the same time, it's becoming obsolete at the time when there's 100% organic seed used in a country. So the less organic, the more organic seed is used, the less the fund will be fed. Then we have seen some crowdfunding. Actually, there are a few examples of crowdfunding. There's one crowdfunding concept of non-profit. At non-profit status is the open source seed concept. If you want to have crowdfunding like through a platform, of course, it causes high administrative expenditures, and therefore, until now, we have not seen so many experiences. And I would be happy to learn more if in other countries the concept of crowdfunding is maybe used a little bit more. And then we have the participation of the value chain. As we have seen, the fair breeding concept of NATURATA, where 0.3 of the net sales from organic fruit and vegetables are donated to a one breeding initiative. But of course, this focuses on only one breeding initiative. Then we have a concept, it's a high oleic organic sunflower concept, where 12 companies join forces and invest for 7 years in supporting organic sunflower breeding, where gzpk are also member and or coordinator of this. And then in India, we have a very interesting concept. It's called the Organic Cotton Accelerator. It's the participation of the major textile label organizations. They are, for instance, H&M, CNA. They joined forces together with the Mercator Foundation to support organic cotton breeding in India. And this is a very interesting project because it's a pre-competitive cross-sector pool funding strategy, where FiBL Switzerland, Monika Messmer is involved, and we could learn a lot from this project. There are also some limitations because it's difficult to convince the actors to become active in such projects. I mean, we have heard from fair breeding that it's somehow an intrinsic value to support organic breeding, but looking at the needs, that we need about 10 to 20 million a year of organic breeding, we need to convince more actors to become active, and therefore we need some more arguments to find them to convince actors to join forces. I have one slide on the different sources of funds and the use of funds. They are not directly linked to each other, so there are cross links between, but we try to sort it a little bit. So in the very low bar, we have the public subsidies. They are mainly used for breeding research, pre-breeding on conservation activities. Then we have the non-profit financial resources like the seed funds, the animal breeding, the fair breeding. So this is for non-profit breeding activities, also dedicated to biodiversity, sustainable nutrition, cultural heritage. Then we have the licenses and variety development contributions, which are paid by farmers or the multipliers. They are used for the variety level development, for instance, for yield and stability, for cultivation, so they have a focus to serve the needs of the farmers. And then we have this investment in the future from the entire value chain. This is like focusing on the demand-oriented organic breeding to see what the sector is needed, and therefore we are looking for this cross-sector pool funding strategy. Here I can show you a very small selection of projects from the past and current projects promoting organic plant breeding. As I mentioned, Monika and me, we have coordinated this supporting project for organic plant breeding, but there we realized that public funds are not the initial or the only source of breeders, because we often only have this pre-breeding and breeding research, but there was a strong need to develop a cross-sector pool funding strategy, and therefore Monika and me, we developed the concept paper, which will be presented later. Then we applied, or FiBL applied, for a new project. It's called Engagement Biobreeding. It's the host of this meeting today. It's to discuss funding discuss the funding for animal and plant breeding across Europe. And then at the same time, many of us and also the participants who joined to this workshop today are working within the LifeSeek project. It's a Horizon 2020 project for 4 years. And we have been very active in the different sectors on organic plant breeding and organic seed production. And you can find a lot of information on the website. And there's also a marketing campaign. Then I have this very nice project. I'm really looking forward that this will be very fruitful. It's a project coordinated by Mitja Seyffert from the BÖLW, and this is the implementation of a cross-sector pool funding strategy, which was initially designed, the concept which Monika and me designed And we now want to implement this project, and we are supporting this project. And you will learn about this project in a few minutes.
Yes.
So,
thank you very much, Freya. Our next speaker is Mitja Seyffert. He works for the Federal Association of Organic Food Industry in Germany, BÖLW, together with retailers, producers, breeders, and other initiatives. BÖLW is working on a sector-wide solution to finance organic breeding work in Germany. Mitja will present the general concept of the pool funding strategy, and also this topic will be more in detail discussed during workshop 1 in the afternoon. Please, Mitja.
Thank you very much, Teresa, for the introduction, and to my previous speakers for all the nice presentations and the perfect transition from you, Freya. So as you have said, I'm coordinating the pool funding project at BÖLW. For those of you that are not aware, because they are from other countries, who the BÖLW is, I want to give you a short overview. The BÖLW was founded in 2002 as the umbrella organization of the entire organic sector in Germany. And they represent not only the farmers, but also the food processors and the retailers. In total, in the last year, 2019, the entire sector managed to generate a turnover of about 12 billion euros in Germany, thus making Germany the largest organic market in Europe. And 34,000 farmers manage about 10% of German agriculture area and provide inputs to over 16,000 processors of organic foods. Behind BÖLW are different associations, different organic associations, of which you probably know some of them from the different areas of farming, processing, and trade. But coming to the project, what the project is trying to achieve, and this will be familiar now that you have heard a lot of the other presentations, is to really implement a reliable and long-term funding scheme for organic breeding. We have heard quite a few solutions, but usually they involve a limited scope of actors or are also limited in time. And the idea here is to really build a structure that goes beyond bilateral collaborations and to provide the stable funding also for the entirety of the variety of crops. So not only the most interesting and commercially attractive crops, but also smaller varieties. And this is to be thought to be achieved by engaging the entire organic sector. As Freya has mentioned, this project is basically built on a concept paper that was written in 2018, in which 11 cornerstones or a framework of 11 central aspects was developed by FiBL. And I want to quickly go through them so that you have an idea of where the project is starting from. The first cornerstone is that plant and animals, as they are treated in an integrated manner in organic farming, should also be integrated when it comes to their breeding efforts. Second, to increase acceptance and to share the financial burden, the entire value chain should be involved in this project. Third, to minimize price increases, which normally appear when you increase costs in the beginning of the value chain. The idea of actually raising the funds is to go towards the end of the value chain, the so-called point of sale, and to base this turnover, or to base the amount that has to be paid on the total turnover of organic foods. So similarly to the fair breeding project, the idea is to take a certain percentage. The fourth aspect is that it is necessary to increase the chances of success. A good consumer communication is absolutely necessary. Fifth, existing support structures, of which we have had also some examples already, are to be treated not in a competitive manner, but they should be strengthened and added to instead of competed with. sixth cornerstone is that in order to align the breeding efforts, the funded breeding efforts in an optimal way with the future demands and the current demands of the entire value chain, it is necessary to implement a central coordination structure which can handle all these different demands. Seventh, the payout criteria should be developed in a transparent and participatory manner to improve or to increase the best results in terms of the outcome. Eighth, to boost breeding for the 50 most important crops and animal breeds, 20 million euros are needed each year. And ninth, we've heard this before already also, the money should not go into breeding itself only, but also to be used for capacity building, so the support of education and training and new initiatives. 10th, we try to increase the financial leverage through match funding, so use the money to also get third-party funding and public funds. And finally, to also go beyond non-for-profit organic breeding initiatives and also cooperate with conventional breeding initiatives if they are actually taking up organic breeding. So this is the general idea. How would this look like? I've brought to you a pretty rough picture of the German organic value chain with the different steps that are involved along the way. And similarly to the fair breeding project, we have the goal of kind of closing the loop. So we try to go to the end of the organic value chain where the retailers are situated, and then take from the entire organic food turnover of 12 billion euros a small percentage of 0.2%, pool it in a common structure, and then pay it out to breeding initiatives. If we manage to achieve this, we would be able to generate a total volume of 20 million euros each year. And a very important aspect, of course, is, as I have mentioned, that the demands and necessities of the entire value chain are being integrated into the decision making. Now, as you can probably imagine, implementing such a concept is actually quite challenging. And I brought a small depiction and a short list of the many challenges there are. One big problem, obviously, is that we are faced with a huge variety of different actors. Especially also in the retail area. This is not one homogeneous field, but there's a lot of different actors with different interests. This is also one aspect that we will touch in the workshop this afternoon. Second challenge is the problem of time horizons, the urgency to act now and to invest now versus the long-term benefits. The third challenge is that we are talking about a highly competitive setting here. The food retail sector is actually very fighting a lot about margins, and they are not, or many of them are not entirely used to holistic thinking and cooperation. And a fourth aspect is what is really key, as I've mentioned before, is the communication to consumers, which also as a key challenge will be tackled by one of the workshops this afternoon. Luckily, we are not starting from scratch, but we also have a few benefits that are connected to this project, because a centralized, coordinated approach helps to overcome the market failure and actually helps to deliver the diversity needed and puts the money where it has to go. It is the only possibility to integrate the needs of the entire value chain and to find a consensus amongst all actors. And it can provide transparency, trust, and stability, as well as facilitate consumer communication. Lastly, I want to show you the project timeline. This project is funded for 3 years by the two foundations of Stiftung Mercator and Software AG Stiftung. And right now I'm in the middle of the development phase, where the goal is to fine-tune the 11 cornerstones of the larger concept paper in a participatory manner. So by engaging and speaking with the actors from the value chain to really come up with a solution that works for the actors. And as of next year, the project will enter its implementation phase, in which all the theory then will be put into practice, which means that this new structure shall be implemented, the funds will be raised, and most importantly, breeding initiatives will be supported more strongly and hopefully also in the very long term. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mitja, for the presentation. So I would like to say goodbye for now to everyone. Thank you to all the speakers and to the organizers.